Welcome to Philosophy of Action. This is the first in a series of video essays on the financial system. I think the system we have now is deeply faulty. Not because exchange, trade, or even money itself are bad, but because the current system increasingly allows financial claims to drift away from the material reality they are supposed to coordinate. To explain that, I first need to explain what I think money actually is. My broader framework is this. Human societies are networks of what I call compelling force. By that I mean the capacity to shape human will, action, or material reality in accordance with the will of initiating actor, or the self. That can happen directly when I physically do something, for example, in the world, or socially when I get other people to do things for me. So there is direct compelling force or physical compelling force, moving, cutting, striking, making, and there is social compelling force, paying wages, issuing legal commands, persuading, threatening, rewarding, shaming, inspiring, organizing. In practice, most large-scale human coordination happens through this second form, or rather, most of the time, a combination of both. After all, persuading generally translates itself into some kind of human action as well. We get other people to act, and through them, matter is transformed. At least that's how the second form, or social compelling force, works. This matters because money is best understood as one subtype of that broader structure. In this framework, money is a form of economic compelling force. More precisely, money is a socially recognized claim on resources, labor, and future production. It's a transferable, compelling force. It works not by magic, but because it alters the weighting of motives in other people's minds. Money induces labor, allocates goods, purchases expertise, buys time, secures compliance, and can even be converted into other reservoirs of power, such as political influence, prestige, media, or coercive capacity. Impersonal. Most forms of social compelling force require some form of personal or ideological alignment with the person issuing them. I obey you because I love you, or fear you, or respect you, or believe in the same law as you, or share the same religion, or trust your judgment. But money is different. I do not need to know you, like you, believe in you, or agree with you in any deeper sense. If I value money, and if I believe others value money, then money allows you to directly access my actions without personal loyalty. That is why money enables coordination among strangers on a scale that older and other social systems cannot. So money is not the thing itself. It's not food, it's not steel, it's not labor, it's not electricity, not houses. It is a claim form. It's an abstract power over exchange. It is basically an abstracted compelling force, or social compelling force. But that raises the obvious question. If money is an abstraction, then what keeps the abstraction honest or functioning? Or rather, what's underpinning that abstraction? What makes it work? Historically, one answer was that a thing used as money was also valued in and of itself. Gold, silver, copper, salt, cattle, and other commodity forms of money were not merely symbols, they were goods that people already wanted. That meant that when such things circulated as money, you were not merely exchanging a pure abstraction, whose worth depended entirely on social belief and institutional enforcement. You were also exchanging something with independent commodity demand. Not metaphysical inherent value, but independent value outside of the monetary system itself. That distinction is very important. Of course, even commodity money depended partly on social recognition, like gold, which is not valuable because the universe whispers that it is. It is valuable because human beings value it. But there is still a major difference between a monetary object that's also desired outside the exchange system, like gold being desired because, well, we enjoy the look of gold, and a monetary object whose value is overwhelmingly dependent on continued acceptance within that system. In other words, money, like gold, which is in and of itself valuable, has some other method of deriving its value beyond just the social construct of valuation. The fatal problem begins when the financial layer becomes able to generate and circulate claims much faster than the material economy can generate the things those claims are supposed to command. And this is where the current system, in my view, goes bad. Modern fiat systems are not just paper money, they are fiat credit systems. Most money is created through bank lending inside a structure shaped by central banks, interest rates, collateral asset markets, and state guarantees. That means the monetary system is not merely measuring economic reality, it is actively creating tradable claims on future production through credit expansion. When disciplined, that can be useful. Credit can finance factories, infrastructure, housing, innovation, and logistics. It can pull future production effectively into the present. Or rather, it can generate labor to a belief that the money can be used in the future by working in the present. But when it is undisciplined, it can do something else. It can generate a bubble of abstracted, compelling force that isn't actually backed by anything materially. So by that I mean a situation in which nominal claims on labor, goods and assets multiply much faster than the real production structure underneath them. Prices will stop reflecting mainly the relationship between real scarcity and real productive capacity and begin reflecting leverage, collateral chains, monetary accommodation, speculation, policy expectations, and the self-reinforcing behavior of asset markets. The result is not that all money becomes literally worthless. The result is that money becomes a much less reliable guide to what's actually going on in the material economy and world. In other words, modern fiat credit systems can become informationally distorted and politically overprotected, such that financial prices and claims no longer map well onto the underlying material economy. That is not just philosophy. We have seen versions of this repeatedly in reality. Before the 2008 financial crisis, large amounts of credits expanded into housing and housing-linked financial products. On the way up, the expanding credit itself supported higher asset prices, and the higher asset prices then supported yet more borrowing. That is exactly the kind of self-reinforcing abstraction I'm talking about. Financial claims growing through their own internal logic rather than through corresponding growth in real productive capacity. IMF work on asset price bubbles describes how bubbles can relax collateral constraints during the boom and amplify downturns when they burst. BIS work likewise emphasizes that the role of credit and property price booms endangers financial cycles. The same broad logic appears in quantitative easing. The Bank of England explicitly states that one transmission channel of QE, or quantitative easing, is that central bank bond purchases release the price of other financial assets such as equities, thereby increasing wealth of the people and institutions that hold those assets. The point of the policy is to stimulate spending and financial conditions, but it also means that the system is openly operating through asset price support. It's not unreasonable to conclude that a system that repeatedly stabilizes itself by raising the price of financial assets can over time become more oriented towards maintaining valuations than towards honestly representing underlying productive conditions. After all, a lot of people are getting paid in effectively promises of production without producing anything, or the promises of production actually mapping onto real production, thereby effectively, in a sense, taking indirectly through inflationary means, for example, money or rather productivity from people that are in the material productive economy. This is where my framework's idea of means autonomy becomes important. Systems built to serve a purpose can begin operating according to their own internal logic. Bureaucracies can preserve themselves, rules can become ends in themselves, and financial instruments can begin serving valuation rather than production. That's not an accidental side note in the framework. It is one of the central dangers of all large-scale systems. And I think that this is where modern finance increasingly finds itself. Money was supposed to be a coordinating technology between people, a way to connect labor, resources, production, and exchange across large societies without having to have personal relationships with one another and get to know each other. Effectively, it allows people to get to work immediately. But in a highly financialized fiat credit order, the monetary financial system can begin to behave like a semi-autonomous machine for manufacturing, pricing, refinancing, and defending claims. Claims on houses, claims on bonds, claims on stock, claims on derivatives, claims on future cash flows, claims on collateral chains, claims on claims on claims. And at that point, finance does not disappear into the real economy. It becomes a tower above the economy that effectively extracts value and productivity from it without giving something in equivalent in exchange. And that is what I mean when I say the system becomes distorted. Not that all fiat money instantly becomes fake, but that the financial layer becomes so dense, reflexive, and politically defended that it becomes harder and harder to tell what money is truly commanding in the real world. What money is generated just by moving money around and what money is actually generated by people working and producing real goods. The abstraction becomes too far removed from the thing that is being abstracted. And when that happens, several ugly consequences will follow. First, the system becomes more vulnerable to bubbles, because evaluation can be driven by credit conditions and expected support rather than by the sober relation to material output. IMF and BIS research both treat bubble dynamics and credit booms as macro financial risks, not merely as isolated market oddities. Second, the system becomes distributionally warped. If a policy support works partly by raising asset values, then those who are already holding large financial assets benefit first and most without actually producing anything. The Bank of England explicitly notes that quantitative easing increased the value of assets such as equities and that older, wealthier asset holders gained more from the resulting wealth effects without actually doing any coordinating, managing, or even producing. Third, the signaling function of money weakens. If prices increasingly reflect the structure of leverage, policy accommodation, and speculative collateral rather than straightforward scarcity and production conditions, then money is doing a worse job as an informational guide. Fourth, politics itself becomes entangled with the preservation of these abstractions. Once pensions, banks, funds, public debt markets, and large asset holders all depend on elevated nominal asset values, the political system becomes reluctant to allow serious correction, effectively to blow the tower up all the way down to the actual material economy. Losses are feared not only because some paper wealth disappears, but because the whole chain of claims may seize up. So the current system is not bad merely because it is fiat. It is bad because it is fiat inside a hyper-financialized, credit-amplified, politically backstopped architecture that can continuously multiply abstract claims rather than real production can discipline them. Effectively, we are creating a massive economy that doesn't actually produce anything equivalent to what the nominal size of the economy would seem to represent. In the language of my framework, economic compelling force has become too easily convertible into political and institutional self-protection, while the financial means built to coordinate production increasingly acquires autonomy from the productive purposes they were meant to serve. In the language of my framework, economic compelling force has become completely and utterly diffuse in a sense, or rather, it is being redistributed from the people actually producing the material goods from which it's supposed to come and being given to people in the financial structure that aren't actually generating the real material goods which the economic compelling force is supposed to serve in coordinating their production. Meaning that effectively the economic compelling force in our economy right now, and economic compelling force meaning money, has lost its purpose. Or rather, is no longer doing what it's supposed to do the majority of the time. That is the core diagnosis. No, I do not think that the answer is as simple as just go back to gold. Gold solves some problems and creates others. A hard commodity anchor constrains discretion, but it also is rigid, crisis-prone, and badly fitted to a modern credit economy. Nor do I think the answer is to pretend that pure trust, pure laws, and pure state backing are enough forever. They are enough to keep a currency functioning for long stretches of time, but they are not enough to guarantee the financial system remains proportional to real production. The modern system shows that clearly. So the real question is not, should money be abstracted or not? Money will always be abstracted to some degree. The real question is, how do we stop monetary and financial abstraction from floating too far away from the real economy? My own answer, at least tentatively, is that money should remain a social coordinating technology. We should effectively go back to basics. But it should be redisciplined by a more transparent relationship between output, real constraints, and real public capacity. That could mean several things. It could mean a harder reserve discipline. It could mean partial or timed convertibility. It could mean a public basket of real socially necessary outputs used as a monetary anchor by which some kind of central planning organization tries to match the prices of money. It could mean much lighter limits on how far banking created claims can expand relative to productive capacity. It could mean restructuring the monetary system so that more money enters as direct public issuance tied to the real economic benchmarks and less as a layered private debt creation. I'm not claiming here that I have a fully finished blueprint. What I am claiming is something more basic. Money is abstracted compelling force. Money is the institutional machinery by which that compelling force is stored, transferred, multiplied, and defended. And the modern fiat credit system has become dangerous because it can multiply nominal claims, valuations, and abstract command far faster than the underlying world of energy, labor, material, and production can justify the existence of that money, or rather nominal compelling force. When that gap gets too large, the system starts mistaking paper stability for real stability, and paper growth for real growth. And that is when abstraction turns from a useful tool into a trap. That is all for part 1. In the next part I want to explore what a better system might look like, not necessarily a naive return to gold, but some way of reconnecting money to reality without destroying the coordinating power that makes money useful in the first place.